Well, thank you, my kingdom! Thank you! Oh, here you go, my peasant. Yeah, that's Thor! Thor, with a capital T, Thor. And a lightning bolt in the O. Make sure you do the lightning bolt in the O. My kingdom! I am so happy to be the new, fresh, young face of AYN.
Aren't you like 1,500 years old? No.
Anyway, the Thor is selling wonderfully. Thank you so much for this honor.
Yeah, whatever. I'm really happy for you and everything. And I am gonna let you finish. But let's face it, the Odin is the greatest handheld there ever was. If it wasn't for me and Marvel, would you even know who or what Thor is? What? I said I'd let you finish.
What are you doing here, Father? I already proved my worth to you.
Listen to me, you two-bit new money upstart. It takes more than a flashy smile and a fancy shirt and 2 screens to run AYN.
I've only been out for 3 months.
A famous fickle, you know.
But you iterate on the same thing every year. The Odin 2, the Odin 2 Portal. What's next, Father? The Odin 3?
Funny you should say that. Let's just say my New Year's resolution was to work out.
So it's a challenge, is it, Father?
I wouldn't call you a challenge.
I'll have you know, thanks to me taking over this kingdom, I was finally able to order new contacts. Something you never did for me.
You look smarter with glasses.
Let this be our final battle then.
Indeed, unless one of us comes out with another handheld for like, Christmas or something. Anyway, enough with these games.
This battle will not be decided by gods.
You let the peasantry talk to you like this?
I don't even know who that is. Some kind of YouTuber?
Looks like he lives in his own basement.
You know what? You're right, Father. Why are we fighting? We're gods.
Last I checked.
It's up for us to decide what is good for them.
We are the gods. They're not.
I bet you he only has 5,000 subscribers.
Can you imagine only having 5,000?
We should team up and take out this lowborn YouTuber.
Just like the old days.
Oh, I am far from alone against you two.
Good.
Morphin' time.
Oh? What? No.
Don't scare me.
Oh, no, Father, how?
It's not even fair, really. It doesn't matter. They're mortal and smelly, and we are neither.
YouTubers, assemble.
Let's do this, Father.
It's already done.
At time of recording, you can order the Ayn Odin 3 directly from the company's website, starting at about $329 for shipping. The unit featured in this video is a white Ultra model purchased with my own funds. In fact, I received this unit a month ago, but something happened that delayed the review a bit. Alright, time to get started on this Odin 3. Who the heck could that be at this time of day?
It's probably the pizza I ordered with his credit card. I'm hungry. Oh, hey. It's that Odin doohickey he's getting ready to work on. That looks complicated. You know what? I've seen a couple of his videos, and a cartoon once. Yeah. Let me do this guy a favor. Can't be that complicated. He's gonna thank me. Is this really necessary?
Just read the line.
On behalf of Team Retrog and any place that sells electronics and sharp objects and blunt objects, I, Nefarious, hereby apologize for even thinking I had the intelligence to fix and or look at any handheld device without Mikhailov's immediate and direct supervision. I promise going forward never to touch any handhelds unless they are plugged in with at least 2 adults, making sure I do not break them or dirty them. I just thought I could do a little bit better. I watched at least 2 of your videos. Real sorry about the delay, guys. It might happen again.
It won't happen again.
Thankfully, AYN sent me replacement ribbon cables, and while I really had to get into this unit to replace them, this device is now functioning at 100%. I even swapped the face buttons to be Xbox style while I was at it. I'll talk about this experience a little later in the video, but for now, let's hop on our mount and ride into Spec Town. The Ayn Odin 3 is powered by the Snapdragon 8 Elite processor. The GPU is an Adreno 830. The device can have from 8 to 24 gigabytes of RAM and comes with either 128, 256, 512 gigabytes, or 1 terabyte of storage. You could also expand storage via a micro SD card slot. The screen is a 6-inch AMOLED screen with a resolution of 1920 by 1080 and 120 Hz refresh rate. Giving the device life is an 8,000 mAh battery. For connectivity, this handheld has Wi-Fi 7 as well as Bluetooth 6.0. The device ships with Android 15. Let's go ahead and quickly unbox the unit. Inside the box is the device itself, a starter guide, and a USB-C charging cable. Alright, so now it's time for the part of the video where we tour the device, take a look at the physical hardware aspects of it, and just get our initial impressions, get our feet wet with the device. Let's start with the triggers. This is a very similar, nice, quiet feel to every other AYN handheld that I've used in the past. This is a nice trigger with a lot of travel, but we do have a lack of trigger lock, so you're only going to have that analog input. You're not going to have digital here. You do have digital bumpers on the other hand. Now I did pre-film the D-pad test and the button sound in advance before I opened up this unit because I thought it was just going to be a simple button swap, and it turned out to not be that. It turned out to be something completely different. So let's go ahead and look at that pre-filmed footage beforehand. We'll get the button sounds, we'll get the D-pad test out of the way, and then I'll come back and we'll do the rest of the device tour. Alright, let's start with the button and trigger test. Left bumper, pretty clicky. Here are the triggers. These are Hall sensing analog triggers, so they're naturally going to be nice and quiet. D-pad. And finally, face buttons. They definitely do have an audible click, but they feel on the mushy side, and they don't seem all that bad. Here's the contra test. So I'm wiggling the D-pad down, back and forth, and main character not moving. But intentional diagonals seem to be very intentional, which means that when we get into the Street Fighter test, we're probably going to struggle with special moves, so let's do that next. Street Fighter test. I am getting some special moves off, but not at a 100% degree of success. Yeah, I would say that this is a platformer D-pad and a contra game D-pad. Maybe not so much a Street Fighter D-pad.
and usually these are one or the other. This one, I'm gonna give it an A- on being able to pull off moves. I think if you're good at fighting games, unlike me, you can get used to it. Just based on my success rate here, I'm gonna say, yeah, this is actually a fairly good D-pad. Up top here is the volume up and down buttons. You have a battery indicator, and then you also have a fingerprint sensor on the power button, and this was a feature that was missing from the Odin 2 Portal, but it was on the original Odin 2, so it's nice to see it make an appearance here yet again. You have nice full-size joysticks. These were not on the Odin 2 or the Odin 2 Portal, but you can get sticks like these separate from AYN's website. But here with the Odin 3, these are the default sticks, and they are very nice. I'm very happy that AYN decided to put full-size joysticks here. You have your D-pad, face buttons, start and select up here, and home and back down here. These are Android functions. You have two front-facing speakers. At the bottom, you have a micro SD card slot, 3.5mm headphone jack, and USB-C cable that I believe also provides display out. And on the back of the device, you have your intake, your exhaust. There are two programmable back buttons. And then we could talk really quick about the ergonomics of this device. Now, out of the box, it doesn't feel bad. It's pretty close to the Conquer Pocket Fit, which is another handheld that I reviewed on this channel a few weeks ago, but it's not quite there yet. I don't feel like this is a handheld that I can sit and enjoy for long periods of time, but it does come pretty close. It does have nice ergonomic textured bump outs here, and AYN does also offer a plastic grip like they do with all of their handhelds. This is how I primarily use my device. It just provides this extra bit of support here, and you could still reach all the buttons just fine, and this is a lot more comfortable in my opinion. And unfortunately, unlike the Conquer Pocket Fit, I think this device does need this grip to really feel good for longer play sessions. But if you're just looking for a base experience and you don't want to get any accessories, this isn't necessarily going to be bad either. There is going to be some form of grip here for you. Now, despite this handheld breaking, which delayed the review, there are a few things that I did learn from the experience. First thing I learned is that this device is actually very hard to open and self-repair, so I wouldn't recommend replacing or swapping the face buttons on this device. You'll have to cut some of the pins on the buttons, and this device requires a pretty detailed teardown in order to make sure you don't accidentally rip any ribbon cables. Opening up this device is not for the faint of heart, so if you purchase this device, you either have to be okay with the button layout, you have to never really plan to open it, or you really have to be experienced at opening up devices and working with small electronics. However, if you do have more experience opening up these devices and working with them, you'll find out that these are the exact same buttons as the AYN Thor. That means that you can take advantage of some of the custom face button offerings from people like Sakura Retro Modding. For example, this is a custom button set I got for my AYN Thor, and these can potentially be used on the Odin 3 as well if you are courageous enough to open it up. One last thing to note here is I'm actually a little confused as to why AYN chose to go with a Nintendo button layout when they didn't do that for the Odin 2 Portal. I know the Odin mainline devices have been built this way in the past, but the chipset on this device is not really designed with retro gaming in mind. In fact, I've done very little retro gaming on this device. I've mostly been playing PC games, so I've been happier having that Xbox button layout instead of the Nintendo button layout, and I kind of wish that they made that choice for all of their handhelds. Now that we've had a nice little story time on what not to do with your Odin 3, let's get into some comparisons with other handhelds, starting with the Retroid Pocket G2. In some ways, the Odin 3 is similar to the G2, and in other ways, the Odin 3 just blows it out of the water. They have a very similar hardware design, use similar buttons,
and I'm pretty sure that's the same D-pad. It's pretty clear the design language is due to both Retroid and AYN having more chip as a parent company, because you could see a lot of similarities between these two devices. However, these are actually really two different beasts. The Retroid Pocket G2 is about half as powerful as the Odin 3 and only comes with 128GB of storage as opposed to the potential 1TB of storage the Odin 3 comes with. It's also a much cheaper device at $219, and it's pretty surprising what the Retroid Pocket G2 can handle at that price point. I did a full review of the Pocket G2 that I'll leave linked down below. Now let's compare the Odin 3 to the Retroid Pocket 6, and here's where the lines begin to blur a little. The RP6 again has that very similar design language to the Odin 3, and this rocks the same Snapdragon 8 Gen 2 processor that's in the Odin 2, Odin 2 Mini, Odin 2 Portal, and the AYN Thor. For $279, you can get 256GB of storage and 12GB of RAM. If you look at the 3D Mark Wildlife stress tests, again, the Odin 3 destroys it in raw power. But the Snapdragon 8 Gen 2 is no slouch either. In fact, the Gen 2 is aged like a fine wine and has much more support for custom drivers, allowing it to potentially emulate Nintendo Switch better than on the Odin 3, at least at time of recording. There are drivers coming out that are going to change this experience. The same comparison holds true if you have the original Odin 2, the Odin 2 Portal, or the AYN Thor. In fact, if you have any of these devices, the argument for upgrading to the Odin 3 is a hard one because you already have an amazing device in your hand already. They just serve different purposes. The Odin 2 is a classic. The Portal upgrades that classic feel to have a giant 7-inch OLED screen for cloud gaming, and the Thor brings dual OLED screens and a clamshell for DS and 3DS emulation. In fact, the only real arguments I have right now for upgrading to the Odin 3 are the following. Maybe you're looking for a first handheld and you want something that's future-proof. Or maybe you have the original Odin 2 and you want to upgrade to have an OLED screen. Maybe you want the raw power of the Snapdragon 8 Elite chip for PC gaming natively right on the device instead of relying on cloud gaming or streaming. And finally, maybe you just need that extra storage space up to 1TB for said PC gaming because GameHub doesn't allow you to download to SD cards. So if you don't fit one of these four categories and already have a Retroid or an AYN device, it just gets a little harder to justify an upgrade. However, if you're looking for more information on the performance of the various Snapdragon chips in these devices, I highly recommend that you check out Rob, the Retro Tech Dad's channel, for a deep dive comparison between the 8 Gen 2, 8 Elite, and some other chips like the G2 Gen 2 and the Snapdragon 865. Rob does an excellent job explaining the differences between these chips, and if you're on the fence on ordering an Odin 3, this can really help you with your decision. So it's time to get into some gameplay testing, with a couple of caveats. The Snapdragon 8 Elite is a very new chip for emulation, so unfortunately there are hiccups that you're going to need to figure out along the way, even going back as far as RetroArch. If you try to emulate out of the box, you're going to get crashes or games aren't going to load. You actually need to go into the RetroArch settings and switch to the Vulkan backend. Now this is not something that we're used to doing when it comes to RetroArch. We're used to just loading up the emulator and everything just working. So if you didn't know to go into RetroArch settings and make that change, you might find yourself start to get frustrated with this device. That said, once you know, you're off to the races and you can emulate other systems with no problem. This is going to hold true with standalone emulators as well. If you have the option to switch to a Vulkan backend, you'll find that this device can play a ton of systems and games up to PS2. In fact, we have God of War 2 running at a 2.5x upscale, which is about a 1080p resolution, and we don't have any issues maintaining the frame rate. Things start to get rough when it comes to Nintendo Switch, simply because of the lack of dedicated Snapdragon 8 Elite drivers. This holds Switch emulation back and can cause crashes where you might not have expected them in older handhelds. Take this indie game called Monster Catching in Paris. It runs pretty well on the AYN Thor using a custom turnip driver for the Snapdragon 8 Gen 2, albeit maybe with some small graphical glitches. On the Odin 3, it just crashes, even with a recently released custom driver for the 8 Elite. If you're coming from an Odin 2, you might run into some of these issues where some Switch games just won't work at the time of this recording. However, given time and extra help from the community, these games might just run well later down the line. Unfortunately, as of right now, Switch emulation on the 8 Elite just doesn't seem to be there, and requires a lot of tweaking. Even then, games that run well on older devices might see some graphical issues on this one. Where the 8 Elite really shines is with light PC gaming via GameHub. Now this is a new territory for us handheld users. We used to have to emulate Switch in order to be able to play certain games, and now we could simply run the PC versions and get much better headway. The nice thing about GameHub Lite is that we can also sync with the Steam Cloud, so any lightweight or older games you might have started on PC will allow you to be able to continue your saves here on the Odin 3. My personal favorite use for this feature is actually Balatro, so I can continue my PC game on the Odin 3, and then if I want to play on the Steam Deck or another x86 handheld, I can just bounce right back to that, and everything will just continue right where I left off. And it just blows my mind that we can even play some 3D tiles on this device. Nothing too fancy or crazy, we're not getting Monster Hunter Wilds or anything, and I couldn't even get Monster Hunter Rise to work. I was still able to get a fair bit of titles running. If you're okay experimenting, you'll find that there are a fair bit of PC titles the Snapdragon 8 Elite can actually handle. As long as you go in with an open mind, you'll find there's quite a bit you can actually enjoy here. If you are planning on using the Odin 3 similar to a Steam Deck Lite, where you're going to play some lightweight and indie titles, then I do highly recommend you grab either the Max or Ultra model, because GameHub Lite will not let you save to an SD card, and the storage of these titles can add up. Alright, we've covered quite a bit, so let's start to wrap things up with my final thoughts. This handheld is great for light PC gaming, especially on the go. The Odin 3 is a great handheld to get caught up on those smaller games that have just been taking up space in your backlog. If an x86 is just getting too big and bulky for you, this is a pretty decent and small alternative combined with a gorgeous OLED screen that will wow you if you're coming from the original AYN Odin 2. The raw power of the Snapdragon 8 Elite also gives this device a bit of future-proofing. While it may not be perfect now, I expect this chipset to age as gracefully as the 8 Gen 2 has. I think that in time, the Odin 3 will gain more and more support, which might make this device the one to get in 6 months. And if you do decide to invest in one now, you might have some growing pains, and you might need to be a little patient, but you might just be looking at a handheld that will be relevant for years to come. However, no device is perfect, so let's get into the negatives. I wish that AYN used the Xbox placement with the face buttons and not require you to have to open up the device, cut plastic tabs on the buttons, and potentially risk damaging the device just to have that button layout. This isn't a retro device to me. This is a lightweight mini PC with an Android operating system. You could cloud game and play PC games locally, so I'm not sure why AYN kept to the Nintendo button layout here. I would also not buy this device for Nintendo Switch emulation yet. Your best experiences for Switch will always be on an actual Switch. However, if that's one of your reasons for wanting to pick up the Odin 3, you might be better served picking up the Odin 2 Portal, Thor, Retroid Pocket 6, or other Snapdragon 8 Gen 2 device, because at least for now, Switch emulation will be more stable on those devices and require less tinkering. If you already have a Snapdragon 8 Gen 2 device, upgrading might not make that much sense if you're already getting the performance you want out of the device you already own. So overall, yes, the Odin 3 is a powerful device. It is surprising what it can do as long as you go in understanding what it can't do and what it might be able to do in the future. Let me know what you think in the comments below. That'll do it for this video, but if you already missed me, please feel free to like, subscribe, and join me in the Retro Handhelds Discord. Please consider joining these wonderful people who grow and support this channel through Patreon. Thank you so much for watching, and until the next one, bye for now.